to be able to capture leads and ultimately being able to grow revenue. So there's loads of events that happen every single day, every single week that have your ideal clients either in attendance, and it's not even necessarily, they could be referral partners, things like that, but they can be either in attendance or they're there as exhibitors, and recognizing ultimately that there's loads of opportunity for you if you're able to get in front of them. The item that I see a lot of people do really is really not being able to leverage these events, and especially ones whether you're speaking with, which is going to be the primary focus today. And the mistake is not really having a compelling format by which they're actually presenting. They don't have a mechanism to actually leverage that opportunity to generate leads, and ultimately not really capturing those people so that you can be in front of them. The opportunity here is to go through kind of the format by which you are going to be able to communicate in a very clear, concise fashion that allows for you to be able to generate those leads, and ultimately being able to help grow your business. So the thing here that happens in a lot of instances, and here's the primary thing that I want you to be thinking about, is that you have an entire 60-minute session, potentially 45 to 60 minutes typically, maybe more, to be able to actually build a relationship with the audience, the people that are listening. And ultimately, there's every single minute that you're actually there is an opportunity for you to kind of lightly sell, and how you can actually do that in a way that actually never even feels like you're actually truly selling. So you, I'm sure, have attended events in the past, and I speak at events relatively frequently, and I've been able to generate loads of leads this way, and being able to speak in front of someone else's audience to be able to generate leads. Really great way of doing it, and fortunately have had a couple of opportunities to be paid to be in front of my ideal client, ultimately being able to generate leads as well. And it's just such a phenomenal experience to, one, be able to have a platform to do so, and ultimately not have to spend money to be able to generate those leads. It's just great. So what I want us to go through is kind of the way, and the things that I want you to be thinking about is how to actually go about generating those leads in a meaningful way. So to start off with, I'm just going to kind of go through this list one by one. It's kind of a checklist, if you will. So the first one is capture context for nurture. So there needs to be what I want you to be thinking about is, what do you have as a lead magnet or a white paper or something that you can actually deliver that is going to expand upon what you're speaking about in that particular session. So what can you provide to them? It could be as simple as a checklist like this. It could be a longer white paper. It could be a training. It could be a book. It could be loads of different things that ultimately are tangential or directly related to the topic that you're speaking about in that event, to allow for them to want to learn more. If you have been compelling during that conversation, they're going to want to know how to implement it more so. They're going to want to know how they can actually get in contact with you. And this is a great way for you to be able to make an easy sort of step for them to start to get in contact with you, and for you to be able to nurture them more and start to build a relationship. The thing that I want, and we can kind of put these together, is value bombs, and ultimately being compelling, as I was just mentioning, is super important. And so I want to talk about how you can really make sure that you're structuring your session to be able to be really impactful. And so anytime I am going into a speaking event, I have a loose overarching format by which I am setting up the speaking engagement. And so this is pretty simple, but ultimately I spend the first couple of minutes talking about what my experience has been and who I work with, and ultimately, without directly saying it, essentially giving the audience an understanding of why is it actually important to listen, and why what I'm saying, does that have validity? Why do they care to listen and actually enact what it is that I'm talking about? What makes me uniquely even qualified to actually speak about this particular topic? Once I've kind of covered that, right, what is my background and what I've spent my life doing and my career doing, then I actually go into the topic points. I typically, for a 60-minute session, I'm breaking it into 3 topic points. So here's the overarching topic point, and here's 3 things that I want them to learn within each one. And so I'm breaking down each one of those topic points into 15-minute segments. You have each one 10 minutes where you're going to dig deep into that specific topic. Ideally, in my format of doing so, I typically like to give them actions to actually be able to do. So it's a worksheet involved. They're going to be doing some work inside and during the actual event. And then I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes of each of that 15-minute segment. So 10 minutes digging really deep, and then 5 minutes talking about the impact that this has had with a client. So if you've heard me talk about third-party selling before, it's essentially that. You're going to spend 5 minutes kind of doing some third-party selling. So ultimately, what was the primary pain point that someone had? What was the negative emotion that they were actually feeling? What was the challenge that they had? What was the objection that this particular person had, right? So they have objections to, will this work for me? Is this the right course for me? Why is this impactful? Like those types of things. So what were the things that that potential client ultimately, excuse me, sorry, let me mute my phone. Ultimately, why is it particularly helpful or useful for this, for that particular client? What were the objections that they had? So they all have them, right? And then we talk about the solution. What exactly did they do? And so that should be tying back to what you were just talking about. And then how did it actually impact them? What were the ideally numerical impacts or results that they actually got? And then how did they feel, the positive impact, the positive emotion that they felt after they had accomplished those results? Allowing for them to, because recognizing that ultimately people remember that emotional experience that's really true to the human experience is the emotional experience that each person has on the planet, right? And if you're able to actually get them to see themselves in someone else's situation of how they felt to begin with and how they want to feel at the end, they're going to remember the topic point, they're going to remember the case study. And this is how you can kind of lightly sell without actually selling, because you're not selling anything here. You're just showing them how what you're doing and what you're talking about. So you're going to do that 3 times in a row. That covers about 45 minutes. You have 5 to 10 minutes of the initial introduction. So that's covered between 50 to 55 minutes of that hour-long session. Depending on whether you want to leave space for Q&A, you can reduce the amount of time at the beginning so that you have some space for Q&A at the end. And then finally, the last thing, and this is something that I've implemented recently, is having 3 CTAs. So working with a podcast agency, one of the things that, and it's actually starting to prove useful because I'm getting a greater amount of opt-ins for these types of events. And realistically speaking, a podcast is kind of one of those platforms, right? It's not necessarily an event in the exact same structure, but essentially the same thing, right? Where you're utilizing someone else's audience. And so what has actually been very helpful is I'm offering 3 things, and this was given to me by this agency, and it's working super well. So I'm giving them 3 different CTAs. One that is a very easily implementable thing. So it's a really small yes, right? Like it's a checklist, a white paper, something small. The second is a medium, a bit more of a time investment for them to actually enact it or to consume it. So for me, for example, is typically one of my books. And then the third is like the one that they're really excited about and they're already ready to take action and want to have a conversation with you, which is the ability to book a call. So those are the 3 things that we actually have. We're creating a landing page around the topic point that we were speaking about, allowing for us to actually be able to do that. So let me actually, since we're here, why don't I actually show an example of one of these? So here's an example of a podcast one that we have put together. So it's a little bit about the topic point that we are going to be on, and then those 3 yeses. So 3 CTAs for them to ultimately be able to utilize and enact, and doing essentially the same thing with an event and being able to do that. So ultimately, this is a great way for you to generate leads, being able to actually get in front of your ideal clients, and ultimately being able to truly be able to build revenue and get some leads from the people that you're speaking with. I would love to hear the next event that you're going to be speaking with, what you actually liked about this particular training. And if you have any questions, we're absolutely here to help. See you guys next week.